Phyla was a young man who lived alone in the village of Kona. His parents had already passed away, so he had to take care of himself. He lived in a small hut, far from the village center, and worked as a hunter. However, Phyla never managed to catch big animals. Every day, he would return home with small bush rats or little rodents. The other hunters would laugh at him, saying, "Phyla, when you catch something big, come talk to us." But Phyla didn't mind the laughter. He knew he was doing his best. He would take the small animals to Mamaki's shop, where he would trade them for food. Mamaki liked Phyla because he was always polite, even when the other villagers mocked him. In fact, the people in the village didn't like Phyla much because of his worn-out clothes and his quiet ways. Even his friends had abandoned him, saying he wasn't good enough. "Phyla, you're a loser. Look at your small catches," they would laugh. Despite everything, Phyla remained kind, even when things were tough. He didn't have much, but he kept his head held high, hoping that one day things would get better. Despite the hardships, Phyla never stopped being a good person. He didn't get angry or shout back at those who laughed at him. He simply did his best, day after day, venturing into the forest with the hope of finally catching something big, although that big catch never seemed to come. But deep down, Phyla knew he had something more important, a good heart. One day, while walking along the road toward the forest, the sun was shining, and the birds were singing. Phyla spotted two beautiful sisters, Kiki and Titi, chatting and laughing by the path. As was his habit, Phyla, always polite, smiled and greeted them, "Good morning, sisters." Kiki and Titi looked at him and then at each other. Then, they started laughing even louder. Phyla was confused but didn't show it. With courage, he asked, "Can I speak with one of you?" Maybe, just maybe, they would give him a chance. Kiki, with a mean smile, replied, "Even if we were dead, our bodies wouldn't accept your proposal, Phyla." Titi added, "Look at you, with those small animals and your ragged clothes. What do you have to offer anyone?" Their words hurt Phyla like sharp thorns. He felt his heart sink but didn't say anything back. He stood there, watching them laugh and walk away, leaving him feeling small and alone. Later that day, Phyla went hunting again. Although sad, he tried his best. By evening, he had caught 2 rodents and 2 bush rats. It wasn't much, but it was something. Maybe I can sell them at the market, he thought. And with that hope in his heart, Phyla headed to the market, ready to try again, even though Kiki and Titi's words still echoed in his mind. He reminded himself that he was more than their cruel laughter. He had his own strength, and that was enough for him. Arriving at the market, Phyla placed his small animals for sale, hoping to earn a few coins to buy food. Suddenly, who does he see? Kiki and Titi. They approached him with sly smiles on their faces. "Phyla, we want to buy your hunt," Kiki said sweetly, pretending to be interested. Phyla, surprised but hopeful, replied, "Each bush rat costs 7 silver coins, but I'll sell them to you for 5 silver coins each." He was willing to offer a lower price, hoping they would deal fairly this time. Titi reached into her bag, counted out 10 coins, and showed them to Phyla. "Here's your money," she said. Trusting them, Phyla handed over the meat. But instead of giving him the money, Kiki grabbed the meat, and the 2 sisters walked away laughing. Phyla stood there in shock. He had been tricked. They took his meat but didn't pay him. His heart sank again, even deeper this time. The people in the market saw what happened and, instead of helping him, joined in the mockery. "Phyla, you can't even sell your catch without being cheated." The young man was devastated but held back his tears. Calmly, he gathered the remaining animals and walked away. It seemed life was getting harder and harder for him, everything was going wrong. But Phyla remained steadfast, keeping the hope that one day things would improve. Even with the pain in his heart, he chose to stay strong. One hot afternoon, after a long day of hunting, Phyla went to the stream to bathe. As he got closer, he heard quiet sobs. Curious, he followed the sound and found a large woman sitting by the water, her face buried in her hands, crying alone. Phyla, always gentle and compassionate, approached her slowly and said, "Hi, why are you crying?" The woman, whose name was Bisola, looked up, surprised to see someone there. With tears in her eyes, she replied, "I cry because people mock me. They call me cruel names because of my size. No one wants to be my friend, and everyone laughs at me." Phyla, listening attentively, understood her pain. He knew exactly what it felt like to be ridiculed and excluded. But instead of joining the cruel words, Phyla smiled and said, "You are beautiful." Bisola stopped crying for a moment. No one had ever said that to her before. She looked at Phyla, unsure if he was being sincere. But Phyla meant every word. "You are lovely," he repeated. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Bisola wiped her tears and smiled slightly, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Before leaving, Phyla said, "I'll come back to see you at sunset." Bisola was surprised. No one had ever promised to visit her, and she wasn't sure if he would really come back. But Phyla nodded and left, leaving Bisola with a small spark of happiness in her heart. For the first time in a long while, someone had seen her for who she truly was, not just for her size. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Phyla kept his promise. He walked to Bisola's hut, feeling a bit nervous but determined to see her. Upon arrival, Bisola was sitting outside, cooking a simple meal. She looked up and was surprised to see him. "You really came," she said softly, almost in disbelief. "Of course," replied Phyla with a smile. "I told you I would." They sat together under the starry sky, talking quietly as the night settled in. The atmosphere was soft and welcoming, and for a moment, all the worries of the day seemed distant. Bisola shared with Phyla her life before arriving in the village of Kona. She spoke of her old home, her family's traditions, and the beautiful crafts she used to create. As she spoke, Phyla was captivated by the beauty of her words and the sincerity in her smile. Have you ever stopped to think about the impact a meaningful conversation can have on a relationship? Often, the words we exchange have the power to create deep and unexpected connections. Phyla was learning this with Bisola every moment. He was fascinated by her, not just by her appearance, but by the strength and determination that emanated from her essence. "You said you make crafts? What kind of things do you make?" Phyla asked, curious. The light from the fire reflected on her face, and Bisola smiled, her eyes shining with enthusiasm as she spoke about her creations. "I make jewelry and small ornaments. Each piece tells a story, and I create them thinking about the people who will use them," she explained. "Imagine how gratifying it must be to create something with so much love and care." Phyla listened attentively, admiring the passion she had for her work. "And you? Have you ever felt that passion for something you do? Something that makes your heart race?" The night continued, and as they talked, Phyla shared his own experiences as a hunter. He spoke about the difficulties of being ridiculed by other hunters, but also about the small victories that kept him going. "I always hope to catch something big one day, but even the small animals have their value," he said with a slight smile. "Exactly," Bisola responded. "Sometimes, it's the small moments that make the biggest difference in our lives." Have you ever thought about how valuing small successes can change your perspective? Over time, their conversation became more personal. Phyla began to share his insecurities and the challenges he faced. Bisola listened attentively, and the empathy between them grew with each word. "It's hard when everyone laughs at you. But I try to remember that I am more than their opinions," Phyla confessed. Bisola nodded. "You're right. And what really matters is how you see yourself. Your courage to be kind in the face of so much disdain is admirable," she commented. The connection between the two was palpable, and Phyla felt that he had finally found someone who truly understood him. As the sun began to rise, bringing new colors to the sky, they knew that that moment had changed everything. The friendship that had formed was strong, and both were determined to support each other. "Promise me that we will always be friends," Bisola said, looking into Phyla's eyes with sincerity. "I promise," he replied, touched. "And I will always be here for you." Have you ever had a moment where a friendship felt unbreakable? As the days passed, Phyla and Bisola continued to meet. Sometimes, they would explore the forest together, and other times, she would help him prepare his traps. Those moments became a relief amidst the disdain they both faced in the village. Together, they were stronger. But things weren't perfect. The mean comments from the village still echoed in their minds. One day, while walking to the market, Kiki and Titi appeared again. They were accompanied by other villagers, laughing and pointing at Phyla and Bisola. "Look! The poor hunter and the elephant are still together," one of them shouted. Phyla felt his heart tighten. It was hard to ignore the cruel words, but when he looked at Bisola, he saw that she was also hurt. But instead of letting himself be beaten down, he took a deep breath and decided to be brave. "Let them talk," he said, trying to comfort Bisola. "We know who we are, and that's what matters." Bisola smiled timidly, admiring Phyla's courage. "Thank you for always being by my side," she said, feeling stronger with his presence. Have you ever wondered how the support of a friend can make all the difference in difficult times? As time passed, their friendship deepened into something more profound. There was a sparkle in Phyla's eyes whenever he looked at Bisola, and she began to feel the same. But there was a growing fear within him. What if the love he felt wasn't reciprocated? What if, when Bisola returned to her previous life, she left him behind? One afternoon, while they were together, Phyla decided he needed to be honest. "Bisola," he began, hesitating. I feel something more for you. Would you mind telling me how you feel?" His heart was pounding. He knew that what he was about to say could change everything. Bisola looked at him, her face blushing slightly. "I also feel something special for you, Phyla," she confessed. You made me feel valued, and that's something I've never experienced before." What a relief it must have been for Phyla to hear those words. But before they could explore these feelings, reality interrupted them. The day of the grand wedding in the village was approaching, and social pressure was mounting. Each day, the laughter and mockery intensified. But there was also a sense of anticipation. Things were about to change. The day of the wedding finally arrived, and the village was decorated like never before. Everyone was excited, but Phyla didn't feel like part of the celebration. He didn't know that the big event would be the revelation of his own future. When he received the invitation, he was stunned. How could a simple hunter be an honored guest? At the ceremony, the tension was palpable. And when the bride entered, the world seemed to stop. When Bisola lifted her veil, the expression of surprise and admiration swept over the village. "It's the queen," everyone whispered. Phyla was speechless. What he thought was just a celebration now revealed something much bigger. He looked at Bisola, who was radiant, and realized that she had fought for him. In that moment, all the disdain and mockery they had endured dissipated. Phyla finally felt seen and recognized, not just as the poor hunter, but as a man worthy of love. And you? Have you ever felt recognized by someone in a way that changed everything for you? Love can be a powerful and transformative force. The celebration continued, and the message of respect and kindness echoed throughout the village. Bisola, now queen, used her position to promote kindness and compassion among everyone. Phyla, in turn, found not only love but also a new purpose. Together, they showed the village that appearances and status do not define a person's value. As the party unfolded, Phyla looked at Bisola and felt a warmth in his heart. He knew that, regardless of the challenges they might still face, they would have each other. After all, they had overcome so much together. And you, have you ever thought about what makes a true and lasting relationship? Over time, the village transformed. The lessons learned under Phyla and Bisola's leadership became a legacy. They showed that kindness, respect, and inner strength are far more valuable than any material wealth. And so, they lived happily, building not only a life together but also a community where everyone was valued for who they truly were. Their story reminds us that true value lies in the connections we form and the love we give and receive. What would you take from this story into your own life? What lessons can be applied to your relationships? Think about it, because, in the end, we are all part of a great journey, seeking love, acceptance, and, above all, the kindness that can change the world around us.